Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be wrapping up the last of my 2024 reads. We're going to be talking about all of the books that I read in December. I have them all behind me. I did end up doing a little tally so we can go over kind of the stats of what I read this month. I had one DNF and I counted the page that I DNF'd it. So in total this month, I read 4,250 pages, 11 books. I read 5 fantasy, 1 fan fiction, 1 romance, 2 Greek mythologies, 1 mystery and thriller, and then 1 contemporary / women's fiction. Today we're going to be doing our final wrap up of 2024, and then we can finally just get fully into the 2025 reads. Before we get into this video, I actually did want to say I made an Instagram account, so if you want to follow me, I will have it linked down below. It's chelsxchillcontact. I just thought it would be fun to stay active and stay up to date with y'all. So yeah, always linked down below is my Goodreads, but now I have an Instagram, so if you want to keep up with me, make sure to follow me there. So before I get into the physical books that I have, I do want to talk about 2 books that I read on my Kindle, just so I don't forget about them. So I read, obviously, Manacled. I've been talking about it pretty much in every video since I read that book. If you want my full reactions to Manacled, I did do an entire reading vlog. It's like almost 40 minutes long. It's probably my longest video I've made. Absolutely loved it. It's a 6-star read. I can't believe it's taken me this long to read Manacled, but I also can believe it because I'm not a huge Harry Potter fan. If you do not know what Manacled is about, Manacled is a Draco x Hermione fanfic, and in this fanfiction, Voldemort ends up winning the war, and so there is a repopulation effort with the wizards, and Hermione is taken to be a part of it. It is just genuinely, I think, the best written, most well thought out work of fiction. I think books and reading is so much fun when it's standard published books, but there is just something that regular authors can't do that fan fiction authors can do. I think maybe it's because we already love and know the characters. I love fanfic so much. I read so much fanfic when I was younger, and I feel like in 2025 I need to read some more. My windows are open because it's so hot, so I'm so sorry if you can hear that, but I will be dying of sweat if I close them. The next book that I read on my Kindle was a book that I rented from the library called Not in My Book by Kitty Holt. This book is said to be the hating game x like a beach read type of story, and if I'm completely honest, I didn't hate the book, but I didn't love it. I don't think it's anything memorable, and I literally do not really remember what the plot of this book was. In this story, it takes place in New York, and we have our 2 main characters, Rosie and Aiden, and they are both in this like college writing class. I can't remember. I think it's like at NYU or maybe Yale. NYU, not Yale. I don't think Yale is in New York City, but they're in this writing class and they're kind of rivals. Aiden always critiques everything about Rosie's writing because she is a romance writer and romance authors aren't really taken serious. They're kind of enemies / like rivals, but they end up having a really big argument in one of their classes, and the teacher basically says like, you're gonna get kicked out of this class, being very disruptive, and they come to an agreement that they will end up working on their final project, this book, together. So you follow them throughout the story as they're working on these chapters together. I thought that was really cute, and I did like the book, but like I said, it's nothing life-changing, nothing that's gonna stick with me forever. I give this book a 3-star. I think if you can find it at the library or maybe on Libby, I would check it out. And then now getting into my physical books that I have. I read a lot this month, and 100% most of these books are talked about in my 24-hour readathon, which if you've not watched, you should go watch it. I'll have it linked down below. Most of these books are in videos that I posted in December, so sorry if this is a little repetitive, but we're just gonna talk about it, close out 2024. So the first book that I read this month, I read Phantasma. I was in / I still am in this sort of like moody, darker fantasy feeling. I want to read fantasy books that are like romanticities, a little bit dark, a game takes place, and so this was the perfect option. I was really wanting to be back in the world of Caraval, and so this was supposed to be like an adult version of that story. In this story, we follow one main character who ends up entering the game of Phantasma because she's trying to get her sister to leave the game. And Phantasma is this game that basically, I believe it's the different layers or like levels of are each of the different games, if I'm remembering correctly, and she's kind of working with someone that she meets when she enters the game, and you follow their story from there. I loved this book so much. Such good vibes, such a fast read. I know some people don't like this story, but it's definitely one of those books it's good if you're in the mood for it. It's an easy read. You don't have to think too much about it. I love the games and the atmosphere of the book, and I don't know, I just love this reading experience. So read Phantasma. Then I had my Wicked obsession in December. I saw the movie. I literally bought the vinyl. I've been obsessed with the storyline, and I finally ended up finishing Wicked. This is obviously the first book that the play is based off of. Now, the book is not just like the play. They're actually very different. I really wanted to read this and know kind of the full lore of this sort of universe. If you don't know what Wicked is, it is the story of the Wicked Witch of the West from The Wizard of Oz. In this story, you follow her in her schooling years. You meet who ends up being the good witch, Glinda. This book is honestly a very heavy commentary on political things. I would recommend to read this. I thought this book was amazing. However, I don't like the pacing of the book. Felt a little bit all over the place. I was really into it, and then it was really slow, and then I was really into it, and then it was kind of slow. So yeah, it is a very long book. Pretty much every page of this copy has that many words, so it does take a while to get through, but would recommend it. I don't know if I'm going to keep on with the series just because I have the other two books. I've already talked about this on my channel, but I don't think the other two books have anything to do with the musical, and I kind of want to go into watching Wicked Part 2 not really knowing what happens in those books. Maybe the end of 2025, like literally this time next year, I might actually go back and read those books. But for now, I'm just happy that I read this and know the story. And yeah, my mom got me this copy. It's a special edition copy of Wicked. I'm pretty sure this is from Target, so if you're interested and want this, I'm pretty sure they have it on sale like all the time. So then we have my one DNF from the month. I'm really sad that I DNF'd this, but I just genuinely could not get into this, and I don't think it's anything to do with this book. I think that I don't like this genre. I DNF'd Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. I have tried reading this book multiple times. I've soft DNF'd this once or twice. If you don't know what Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies is, it is supposed to be a cozy fantasy. And if you don't know what cozy fantasy is, that basically means that you're in a fantasy world, but there's no sort of major problem that's happening. There's no sort of war or anything like that. You're just following characters who are in a fantasy world. I would imagine this is probably closer to like a romance story with a fantasy sort of background. You follow our main character, Emily Wilde, as she is in this village and she is finishing up her encyclopedia. She has to, I think, track down this one last group of fairies so that she can complete her encyclopedia. And her academic rival ends up joining her while she's trying to do this. Emily Wilde herself is a character who is said to really represent neurodivergent individuals really well. I don't know why I can't say that. I've literally tried saying that like 4 times. She is a neurodivergent character, and you can see it in the way that her thought processes are and certain things that she does. I really enjoyed that. I just didn't really care for the characters or the storyline. So I don't even know how far I got it. Oh no, I got 111 pages into this book before I just had to DNF it. Like I don't think I'm ever gonna continue with the series. This isn't a book that I would recommend to my channel, and it just was putting me into a slump. So I tried. I really tried. I don't think cozy fantasies are for me. I need something intense to be happening. I need people to be fighting. I need people to be dying. Next is another fantasy. I read Throne of the Fallen by Carrie Maniscalco. This was the first book that I read in my 24-hour readathon. And if you don't know what Throne of the Fallen is about, it takes place in the same world that her Kingdom of the Wicked series takes place in. So in Kingdom of the Wicked, it is a YA fantasy series. Follow one of our main characters as she is trying to avenge her sister's death. In doing so, she ends up basically conjuring up one of the princes of hell. In that story, you follow just that prince and just that main character. And then in this series, this is the adult spin-off fantasy series with that same world, that same background, but you're following the different princes of hell. There are 7 of them. In this one, we're following Envy. I loved being back in this world. I do think it took me a while to care about the characters, especially the main female female love interest in this story. The whole plot of this book is that Envy is entered into this game because he's trying to save his realm, and the first thing that he needs to do is he needs to find this artist who is the main female love interest, and he needs to get her to paint a hexed object, and she refuses to do so. So for like the first portion of the book, you're just following basically him trying to get her to agree to it. After that sort of plot wraps up, then you follow those two as he's going through the game and kind of their love and what happens. I did enjoy this book, and I'm excited to continue on with this series and this world. I love like this world itself. If you don't like smut, if you don't like spice, don't pick up these books. I had to skip a lot of scenes in this book because it is very spicy. I have unfortunately heard that the next book in the series isn't that great, so I'm nervous to read that one, but I'm very excited for Prince Sloth's book. I hope that's the next one that she releases. Then in December, I ended up finally reading Stone Blind by Natalie Haynes. If you don't know this about me, I love Greek mythology. I love reading retellings and also just like learning more about Greek mythology itself. Stone Blind is a retelling of the story of Medusa. I really enjoyed this. I was kind of surprised with the way that this book is set up and how the story is told, because you're not just following Medusa as the main POV. You're actually following like 4 or 5 different characters' storylines. In the beginning of the book, I was kind of confused. I didn't know how this was going to wrap up, but it wraps up really nicely. I will say, like, this portion of the book, I was kind of bored. It felt kind of long and a little repetitive. I really love this story, and I love the way that Natalie Haynes kind of makes you feel guilty for how, you know, we usually know the story of Medusa being. You follow Perseus. If you don't know who that is, it's the character who Percy Jackson is based off of. She kind of plays into like, why do you feel bad for Perseus and you don't feel bad for Medusa? Like, Perseus is the bad guy, Medusa didn't do anything, she's just existing, and I really loved that. So I definitely want to read more. I also have another one in this pile, but yeah, read this. Then I read a thriller and mystery, and I just don't think this author is for me. This is the second book that I've read from Geneva Rose. I read Home is Where the Bodies Are, and I don't know if I don't like mystery thrillers, if I don't like this author. Like, I don't know what it is, but it makes me so sad because when I think of the synopsis of what this book is about, it sounds so interesting, and then I just was so disappointed with how it turned out. Home is Where the Bodies Are is about, we're following 3 main characters, they're siblings. In the first chapter of the story, their mom ends up passing away, and so in this book we're following them as they're going through, you know, the house. They're getting rid of some of her belongings, and they end up finding this VCR tape. They play it. At first it's these cute family memories, and then it cuts to their dad covered in blood, basically confessing to their mom about something, and then you see a dead person and the tape cuts. And I thought that that was so interesting. I was so excited to see what this story was about. I do think like it's a little bit twisty. I didn't really guess the end. It was Reading this book, none of the characters felt like fully fleshed out. They didn't feel like actual characters. It just felt like words on pages. And maybe it was because I read this during a 24-hour readathon. Also, maybe because this book is really short. I think this book is like under 250 pages, but I just didn't love this. I might give Geneva Rose one more chance in 2025, but she just might not be a thriller mystery author for me. And honestly, maybe thriller and mysteries just aren't the books for me, which would be crazy because I thought I loved thrillers. But lately I've just hated every one that I've read. And then the next book that I read, I ended up reading Women of Good Fortune by Sophie Wan. I love this book. I thought this book was so good and just fun, and it's like a plot that I've read before but also not. So in this book, this is the contemporary fiction, women's fiction book that I read this month. I went into this thinking that it was a romance, but it's not. It's honestly a story about female friendships and growing up. In this book, we are following our main character and her friend group. She is marrying Shanghai's like hottest, most eligible, richest bachelor. In this story, we're following her as she's planning her wedding. Her 2 friends and her have like storylines of reasons that they would need money, and because of those reasons and those storylines, all of the friends and her end up deciding to do a heist. They decide at the wedding they're going to steal the red envelopes that are like the wedding money gift gifts that people leave. This entire story, you're just following them trying to plan the heist, and then the heist actually happening, and then what happens after. I thought it was so fun and so cute. It's a very fast read. It's not long at all, and it's on Spotify audiobooks. So if you don't have the physical copy and you're interested in it, if you have Spotify, I would check it out. I thought this book was interesting, and I've never heard people talk about it, so I wanted to kind of give it a shout out. Really want in 2025 to recommend some books that aren't just super popular on BookTube. So yeah, if you've liked Ocean's 8 and also Crazy Rich Asians, this book is pretty much like if those two had a baby. So yeah, if you're interested in that, I would check this book out. This next book is a book that I was very nervous going into. I've not heard a single good review of this book. And honestly, this is the second book from this author that I have read. This book, I actually like finished the first book that I read from this author. I think I got like a couple pages into and I did not like it. And this is Ava Reid's Lady Macbeth. Can I be honest with you? Don't know really what the story of Lady Macbeth is. Even though I read this is a retelling of that story. I didn't like this book at all. This book is very, I'm going to set up what is happening and I'm not going to give you a lot of plot. You're just going to have to read descriptiveness of the setting and what's happening. But we're not going to have characters really talk to each other a lot. And I really hate that. I want my books to be a lot of dialogue. I want to feel like I'm in the scenes with the characters. And I just can't feel like that when I read this book. I didn't like it. I gave it like a 1 star. It's very short. I think this one also is like under 300 pages and the pages are really tiny. I would save your money. Don't read this. I did not like this. And it's a shame because it's a beautiful book. I will be keeping this book because it's such a pretty cover, but I just didn't like this. If you liked this, please comment what you liked about this book because I'm genuinely so curious if people actually like this book. I've never heard one good review about it. And the last book we are going to be talking about in today's video that I read in December, I always say this title wrong. I was saying Atlanta for so long. I believe it's Atalanta. Did I just basically say the same word? Probably. This is another Greek mythology retelling. Obviously, it is the story of Atalanta. She is like a warrior, sort of huntress. She was raised by the goddess Artemis. She ends up going on this journey to get the golden fleece, and she's the only woman that is on the journey. And Artemis's whole thing is that anyone who is her follower is not allowed to marry men, not allowed to entertain men, be with men, anything along the lines, which is like valid. When Atalanta is on this journey, she ends up falling for a guy and ends up getting pregnant. I would say that's kind of a spoiler, but it's not because it's just a retelling of this story. But I didn't know the story of this character in Greek mythology, and if I'm honest, I didn't really care for it. Nothing to do with Jennifer Saint's writing. I think she is brilliant and I really like the way that she writes. I believe I've read another one of her retellings. I think she wrote Ariadne and Electra, and if I remember, I've read both of those. I really like the way that she writes her retellings. It feels just like a fictional world and a fictional story, but I just didn't care for this direct story itself. So I didn't rate it that high, but it was a good read nonetheless. If you are into Greek mythology, I think that you would really enjoy this, but it is what it is. It wasn't world changing for me. It was just a book I read, I guess. And those were all of the books that I read in December. This is the final video wrapping up all of my 2024 reads, and now we get a fresh start going into 2025. We're already in 2025 the day that you're seeing this, but yeah, if you like this video, make sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye.